And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 58th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where our show has one main goal to give you our perspective of IU sports from the point of view as a student or young adult. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, October 16th, where I am your host, Noah Freeman, and I am with my usual co host, Matthew Lukens.
What's up?
Normally, we'll be going live every Tuesday evening at 8:30 p.m., but if you miss us live, you can subscribe to various networks. You can listen on your own time. Check out our Twitter and Facebook at The Hoosier Sound and subscribe. All of our information is in our website, thehoosiersound.com. All right, Hoosier Nation, it is time for some sports talk. But first, as always, Matt, what is your memorable monologue for this week in IU sports that is not related to IU football?
Thank God we're keeping away from football for the first couple minutes of the podcast, so people don't turn off. But anyways, my memorable monologue has to do with IU and Big Ten Media Days. So Big Ten had their annual media day in Chicago for all the basketball teams because, as I am watching right now, the Sixers and the Celtics are playing basketball, which means it's official. It's basketball season. It's back, folks. Thank God, because football was driving me crazy, both the NFL and the NCAA. I don't even know what's going on in the NFL. I can't even tell you. Like anything. I thought I could predict results in the NFL being an Eagles fan, but I have absolutely no idea anymore. So I've given up on that. And then NCAA football, we're going to get to that, and you'll hear me talk enough about that you'll want me to stop talking about it. So moving on to basketball, it was nice to see two senior leaders for this IU basketball team. Obviously everybody knows how important Juwan is, not only on the court, but off the court. Eddie Cotton of the Hoosier Network did a fantastic piece on Juwan and his Instagram comments, or I think he's going to. He's hyping it up on his Twitter. Go follow him on Twitter if you haven't. Anyways, Eddie has pointed out that Juwan's leadership quality shows in his Instagram comments, where if you go on Instagram and you go under lots of the players on IU basketball, or even ex-players on IU basketball, so you go like a Thomas Bryant, OG Anunoby, Juwan's always commenting on their posts, something funny or just making fun of them or whatnot. And I think that really shows Juwan's character and how he just connects personally with his teammates. And then there's Zach McRoberts. And look, Zach McRoberts might not have the amount of minutes that he had last year, but I think he's going to have much more of an impact just because of the way he works on and off the court. He is such a hard worker. I think he is the hardest working man in college basketball, as IU's announcer said during Hoosier Hysteria. But McRoberts is especially important because this group of freshmen, while talented, could definitely use some guidance with how college basketball works and how to work your butt off in college basketball. And who else is better to do that than our one and only Zach McRoberts? So I'm really excited to see these two play for their senior seasons. And then senior night is going to be lit because both of them are such important to the such importance. God, English is hard. Of such importance to this team. And just they're both beloved by the fan base. And so it'll be a very special moment when these two get their moment in the spotlight.
Matt is not an English major, by the way. So
you didn't know that? Now you know. Yeah.
But yeah, you alluded to a few things actually with mostly basketball, which we're going to get into later, which is part of the episode. And before I talk real quick about something, we had our most voted on poll on Twitter this past weekend. So right after the game, I put out a poll because I don't know about you, but I know Matt and I were definitely really feeling one of the worst losses in the last decade for IU IU football.
I don't know if it's one of the worst losses, but I would say it definitely hurts just as much as that Rutgers loss in 2013 or 2014. No, wait, not 2013, 2015. Just because there was so much excitement going into the game, and IU produced the biggest dud of duds. And
Which
so,
that's what we were talking about, which we're gonna get into.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
gonna cut Matt off before he
Okay.
talks for
Before
10
I start
minutes.
on a rant, because I
Exactly.
will.
Our on Twitter, our biggest voted on poll said, I put out, is it even worth recapping the Iowa game and even previewing Penn State? Because honestly, it's a foregone conclusion. We all knew this since day one, but is it even worth it? And out of all the votes, 3 people said yes, it is worth talking about football. So we are not really going to talk about IU football today. We even got a question from Duncan on Twitter just before we started and said, can we please not talk about IU football? So no, we're not going to talk about IU football very much. Matt is going to we're going to briefly, and I do mean briefly, like 5 minutes max, talk about IU football at this past weekend. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. But then I'm just going to give us a couple small things to look for against Penn State because, the Penn State game might not be as bad as we're all seeing it, but you never know with IU football. Of course, we could go in and get blown out, which would be more likely than not. But for the part that I wanted to talk about first, IU soccer, if you're watching this live, IU soccer's killing it already. 27 minutes and it's 2-0 IU. They're playing Butler right now. So, of course, if you're listening on the podcast later, you know the result. But at least as of the first 27 minutes of play, IU is killing it out there. But the second part I want to talk about is, and I mean briefly again because we could have multiple shows on this, is in lieu of all of the FBI things that are still coming out with everything, I'm still happy that IU hasn't really, I'm putting really in italics, been named in any of these things that have been going on, especially in this past week with all of the investigations. You have a comment, Matt?
No. I don't want to go on the record of saying anything yet, just because a former assistant coach for IU basketball has been kind of the center of the Louisville investigation. Not Book Richardson. I forget his name off the top of my head. But he was a former IU assistant. He was an assistant on the Yogi Ferrell, Victor Oladipo, Cody Zeller team in 2013. But yeah, I'm waiting to say anything just because I don't want it to come back and bite me the butt.
Oh, exactly. No, I just mean that was my point. Was so far there hasn't been much to talk about in terms of IU. So hopefully that trend continues. But as of now, things are better than not. So let's get into part of the show. Matt would like to talk just for a minute about IU football, but give us one or maybe two things that this past game frustrated you the most with, in terms of maybe not just Saturday's performance, but maybe going forward for the rest of the season, because Iowa's in the past. We can't really change anything about it now. So how are we what concerns you the most going forward from how IU football put out for their performance on Saturday versus how are they going to get to 5, 6, 7, any more wins basically throughout the rest of the season?
Wow, you just threw a lot at me. But anyways, I'm gonna go with the two things that I am looking at the most to be like warning signs for the rest of the year. First one is lack of execution on both sides of the ball. Whether it's missing blocks on offense for the offensive line on a running play. Finally, we run the ball. I think it was late in the second quarter where we put Stevie Scott in, and we ran the ball with Stevie. And I don't remember, I think it was our left guard or our left tackle rotated over to help block a linebacker coming in from Iowa, and just completely missed the block, and Stevie lost 2 yards on the run. And I think it was on a 3rd and 5, which of course we're running on a 3rd and 5. But that's besides the point. He misses the block. We lose 2 yards, and it's 4th and 7, right? And it just kills the drive. Not that the run play on 3rd and 5 was going to work anyways, but it's those little things where it's like, we are killing ourselves by the lack of execution, whether it's on defense. On defense, there's been multiple times this year where somebody has just been completely left uncovered. Like, a running back slips out against Ohio State. Ohio State it was. I think it's a 70-yard touchdown from Ohio State. The running back just slips out from the backfield. Nobody's covering him. And I think they were yelling at our Husky position, Marcelino Ball. I can't remember his name. I'm so upset. Marcelino Ball.
Who didn't have the best of the game either, and he's supposed to be the anchor of this defense.
But just over the last couple of weeks, yeah, our key players on defense have not been executing plays, and it's driving me insane. And then the thing that set me off the most on Saturday, and it's my second point, which is a lack of innovation on offense. We have been clamoring all year. Our third string quarterback happens to be our best athlete on offense, or at least the one that we are using the most at multiple positions. That person is Reese Taylor. Obviously, we've talked about Reese Taylor multiple times in the podcast because he's our third string quarterback, but he also plays running back. He plays wide receiver. He does everything basically on the field. He plays a little bit of defense. He's a freshman phenom. He's great. Use him for trick plays. We have him. We're a team. We're an underdog. We're not supposed to win games like against Iowa or against Ohio State or against Michigan State. So use the trick plays, but use them when they're applicable. There's a difference between, well, Matt, they tried it against Rutgers. It's Rutgers. We shouldn't have to use trick plays against Rutgers. Rutgers is the worst team in the Big Ten and has been for the last 5 years. 5 years, they've been the worst team in the Big Ten. And you're going to sit there and tell me that, oh, it was fine, we should use it against them. But against Michigan State, we don't run one play to try to keep the defense honest. Not one play, not a single play. We don't even try to throw the ball down the field. Now we've tried against Ohio State. We try to throw the ball down the field, but we completely forget the running game that was working for the first half of the year and was perfectly fine. We had the leading rusher in the Big Ten through the first 4 games. And you're sitting there and you're telling me, where did the running game go? Because now all we're doing is throwing it down the field, but Peyton Ramsey can't even complete a pass more than 20 yards down the field, so it doesn't make any sense in the first place. And so there's a lack of innovation on offense because it seems like we're either just throwing the ball down the field constantly or we're just going to run the ball completely. And we've had 2 complete polar opposites on offense this year. And then the icing on the cake, third quarter, we're down by 25. And then Mike DeBoer goes, you know what? This is the time in which we should run a trick play. This is the perfect time to run a trick play. When we're down 25 to Iowa, we can't even get anything on offense, and it doesn't even work. The thing doesn't even work. We lose 2 yards on the play.
Matt's going to take a breather. And the only part... I want to post. We're starting to have a little bit of a chat for live stream. So if you don't watch us live, you should come hang out with us at 8:30, and we have some good conversations in the live stream. But I asked what was most frustrating to you, and then Duncan said the fact that the stadium didn't serve beer. And there's some positive outlook. I guess
there is a truer point. Actually, funny story. Breakdown. I'm coming back, folks. I went full Super Saiyan. I'm back. So in class today, my 8 a.m., I took a Lime to class, which you don't know what a Lime is. You can rent these scooters on campus. By the way, great addition, IU. You should keep them. And parking ops, if you keep trying to steal my Limes away because they're not parked in the right position, I will find you. No, just kidding. Anyways, went to class today. We had a person from the ticket office giving a guest lecture in my intro to ticket sales class. Shout out ticket sales class. We were talking about how to get fans into the game and how to get more people in the seats, because they're talking about how they sold 50,000 tickets for this game, but only 40,000 people actually scanned in for the game. Which I looked around, I was like, 40,000 people were not there. Like,
it was less, yeah.
No, it was definitely less. But I'll let them believe whatever they want to believe. It's fine. But it said 50,000 people bought tickets. And I'm like, how do we get people in the games? Well, everybody was out still tailgating. So Duncan, thank you for bringing that up, because I asked her this morning. I said, is IU going to start selling start selling beers at game? And she's beers at game, beers at the game. English is hard.
Matt, the
Beers.
English major.
Yes, my tongue's tied right now. But if the stadium was going to start selling beers, and she said probably because the IU is talking about it. I don't know if it's going to go through or not, but she said it looks like it possibly could. I know the new end zone, they have the new club in there. They actually sell beer and wine inside there, and it's the first time they've been selling it. I think they're going to try it out there first, and then if it's like works out really well, which apparently it has, 40% of the tickets, people who have bought tickets there have renewed, and the season's not even over yet, which is fantastic for ticket sales. So seems like it's working out well, and it seems like it's working out well at Purdue as well. So I could definitely see IU having beer in the stadium in the near future.
There you go. Breaking news.
Why can't I talk tonight? It's so bad. I apologize, everybody. My tongue is like literally swollen in my mouth right now.
Because you're very frustrated. Which
you're right.
I'm going to take the ball away from you, so
we
can dial it back. So I asked you what
was the
most concerning thing going forward, at least for the rest of the season, and I think I'm going to say because things just don't change. From game to game, the game plan doesn't change. First of all, you're supposed to game plan for each team. Like the game plan is supposed to physically change because each team is different. So you change for what their personnel is, but the game plan doesn't change. It's the same exact thing for the past 3 to 4 games. In game, when you're getting beat and you're starting to lose, the game plan doesn't change. It's the exact same thing. So that's the most concerning thing, that whether it's Tom Allen or Mike DeBoer or both, which I think it's more both, are just so stubborn that they're not going to change anything whatsoever. I think that's the most concerning thing going forward. So if things can start changing, and I'd rather them change something and it not work, and it's like, oh, hey, you changed something. It didn't go necessarily a plan, but you tried something different. Anyway, the one frustrating part for me before we go on to IU basketball was just how, and I'm going to leave it pretty simple. Almost, I don't know if there was one third and one or fourth and one play where we were not in the shotgun formation and 0 running backs were in the backfield. 3rd and 4th and 1, we had Peyton Ramsey in the backfield in a shotgun by himself, which makes no sense for a 200-pound skinny white guy to try and get 3rd or 4th and 1 when we've got a gigantic running back. We've got a bunch of different people, or even just having Ramsey under shotgun. Under center, sorry. So he could try and even just QB sneak it. It makes no sense. That's the part that I was so confused about. And anyway, let's continue on.
Maybe I have a small brain, but shouldn't we just run every play under center and not out of shotgun? Because every play we run can just run perfectly fine out under center. And play action passes are a lot better when you're under center. And Mike DeBoer likes to do that a lot.
We're going to open too much of a can of worms if we even go into that.
You know what?
You get into
beginning to try to understand where Mike DeBoer is coming from is, well, maybe that's what makes him like so good and keeps getting jobs, because everybody's like, I don't even know what you're thinking, but apparently it works. You know?
Exactly. Because we could get into like what different running formations to run, but no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go to some IU basketball because there's some more optimism there, to say the least. So we're going to have some fun because we're a little far out from the season, and I mean a little far. Just there's like what is it? I think 3 weeks or something from where we're going to have to start having some sort of scrimmage play, which is great. So we're not going to do
play. We're 3 weweeks from the actual start.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to give our annual predicting, giving our projections for every single basketball game. So we're going to go down the list and say if we think IU has a chance of winning or losing, and then we're just going to follow it along the year. It was pretty fun. It was a big hit last year. But today, let's talk a little bit about lineup projections. I know a lot of IU basketball podcasts and sports articles and newspapers and everyone have talked about it mostly throughout the summer, but it's everything's about coming into fruition. We've seen as much as we can in the off season, and we're about to start the season. Basically, there's not much more we can see because we haven't been able to see much, but at least we can see that There have been no more injuries. Duran's injury is progressing at least as we thought. So kind of everything is going to start out the season as we've seen it recently. So let's go into at least how some lineup projections that we're going to see. Now, I am we're at least going to talk about the starters for the beginning of the season and then where we think the end of the season could potentially go. But then we're also going to sprinkle some in the middle of just like some fun lineups that we might see, like whether it's going to be a guard package or a bigs package or that kind of stuff. And we're just gonna have some fun seeing where lineup projections could go. And if you're in the chat, feel free to add suggestions, say whether you like or not this kind of stuff. And even if you're listening on the podcast later at home, shoot us a message, tweet at us, comment in one of the tweets or something saying that, oh yeah, I like this, or I think maybe we could have this person in there. But Matt, let's at least start with the start of the season. So in 3 weeks, when we tip off for the very first time after exhibition games, there's a little bit of debate for who the starters could be, but I think you and I at least recently have agreed who our 5 starters are going to be. But let's start there. Who are you seeing at the beginning of the season? Who are your 5 starters?
All right, little caveat before we talk about this. If you're coming here and wondering if we're going to do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're not, because that's not how basketball works anymore, folks. There's a point guard, there's a person who runs point, and then there's everybody else. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So running point, and the only position I will talk about specifically is Devontae Green. It has to be him. He's got the experience, obviously, played last year. Yeah, some people are just clamoring that maybe Rob Finney could start, but not at the beginning of the year. And if this team really wants to be good, he shouldn't be starting at all.
Ever.
Because, yeah, not ever. Well, I mean, for giving Dante a game off, maybe. But, sure. For the most part.
If Dante does what he's supposed to, Devontae. If Devontae does what he's supposed to, his position shouldn't even really be a battle. He should be at least progressing so far ahead that basically these freshmen and sophomores shouldn't be able to catch up to him. But we know, at least as of recent, that's probably not what's going to happen.
Yeah. So Devontae at point. Wing players, Romeo, obviously. I'm pretty sure, talking about the starting lineup the whole year, if Romeo's not in the starting lineup, the season has gone to shit. So Romeo.
I have to bleep it out, Matt. Man.
I'm sorry. Anyways, has gone to crap. Romeo will be starting. That and Juwan Morgan are the 2 starters you can just bank on.
Agreed.
Another wing player, Zach McRoberts. I think he'll start. Most of the year. Most people are like, Evan Fitzgerald will start. Or people are like, well, what about Jerome Hunter? Or I don't know, like maybe 3-guard lineup, and we'll put Al Durham in, which would be very interesting, by the way. But
we'll talk about that.
We are going to talk about it. Finney, Romeo, McRoberts, Justin Smith, breakout player of the year candidate, and Juwan Morgan. That's the 5. I'm pretty sure that's a synopsis 5. I think that's the easiest lineup Archie has to come up with the whole year. It's that first starting 5.
So you said Devontae, Romeo, Zach, Justin, Juwan.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go a little bit of a different route. And honestly, it could change because of practice and everything. I think he's just going to add a little bit more height, since we have the height at least, instead of having Juwan at the 5, because I think Archie wants to be a little more successful with if Juwan Morgan was not the tallest guy on the court. And now this team, height is pretty relative, because we've got, except for out of everyone who's going to play, there are only 3 people that are not 6'6" or higher. So height is pretty relative between 6'6" and 6'10". But I do think he wants to try and keep Juwan more not down low under quote unquote center, what you would call a quote unquote 5, because I agree with Matt's statement that it's really hard to, especially on this team and in basketball nowadays, but especially for this team this year, it's hard to put these players under position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I do agree Devontae is going to start at the beginning. Definitely Romeo, definitely Zach, especially with him getting the captaincy alongside Juwan. I think he's kind of solidified his starting role still. Whether he maintains that is something that we will most definitely discuss. But Devontae, Romeo, Zach, Juwan, of course. And then I do think he's going to go someone a little taller than Juwan, just so Juwan doesn't have to bang down low as much, or even use Justin to bang down low. So I think since Duran is injured, I think Evan is going to show that he can shoot the ball and that he's just going to get the starting nod. Now, I do think Evan's going to be the first guy to come out when we start minutes rotations and everything. But at least for putting 5 guys on the floor, I think that's my 5. Likes, dislikes.
I don't know, because this is first starting 5. I don't know if Evan Fitzner is going to be comfortable enough with the defensive system where Archie's going to trust him to be starting. And so that's the only reason why I don't have Evan Fitzner. I would love to replace, and people are going to hate me for this, Zach McRoberts with Evan Fitzner in the starting lineup. I think that's a better offensive lineup if you have a better three-point shooting, which they tell us he's a better three-point shooting, Justin Smith, and Juwan Morgan, who's a better, obviously looked a lot better at Hoosier Hysteria, three-point shooting Juwan Morgan on the perimeter, along with Evan Fitzner. So you have a 5-out offensive system, and you can switch out Fitzner and whoever you want, Smith, Juwan or Fitzner, and put them down low, and you can just rotate them around. I think that works offensively. That's a system that works a lot better, especially in this day and age of basketball. But again, on defense, it's going to be a lot harder because Fitzner doesn't know the pack line as well as the 5 starters will. So
I agree. That's why I do put it in an asterisk, and I think if he were to start, I think he would get pulled sooner than even typical starters get pulled, because generally on average, I think you'd agree it's about 13, 14, 15 minutes into left on the clock in the first half is usually when some side starts to put in their first sub. But if he does, I think that would be a reason that he'd get pulled maybe 3, maybe 4 minutes into the game. But exactly. And I think it's also good to have someone tall, especially if the lineups work to where there is a big guy. There's like a 6'10", 6'11", 7-foot kind of guy that's also very big and muscular down low. Before we get Duran back, really, we don't have a true big guy, which is okay, but we just don't have a true big guy to bang down low with, especially in terms of sheer size. Because sure, we have Evan Fitzner and even a couple of people like Clifton Moore that are technically 6'10", but they're skinny guys. So, but yeah, I think that would be the only sentiment as to where I could see Evan starting as well. And I think his threes are going to come in handy, because compared to last year, anything Evan does shooting from beyond the arc is going to be a warm welcome for the entire rest of the team. But let's get in.
Can I add something?
Sure.
When looking at the schedule too, and just looking at the size of the teams that we're playing, a lot of the smaller teams will not have somebody over the size of 6'9". So we're going to match up a lot better against teams that are smaller with that starting lineup that I talked about. And when you look down the schedule in our non-conference, I think the only team that I can think of at the top of my head that has a really good big guy is Arkansas. And other than Arkansas, Duke has a lack of size this year, surprisingly. I know Duke always has the 5-star center. Their center is Marquise Bolden, and trust me, as a low-key Duke fan, Marquise Bolden isn't good. And then they don't have a center after that. So like we match up
a Duke fan on an IU show.
Okay, but like I root for them to be good because my friend goes there and I visit all the time, and it's fun. I don't like North Carolina. Anyways, that's besides the point. They don't have size. A lot of the smaller teams don't have size either. So looking at the schedule, it's fine. We can give time for Evan Fitzner to become better with the pack line. And maybe he becomes a very good defensive player, surprisingly, because he's mobile and he's 6'10", and the perimeter defenders are helping him out a lot and becomes a decent defender, and he ends up in the starting lineup. Or it gives enough time for Deron Davis to come back, and then Deron can implement himself back to where he was last year in the starting lineup. So look for the big guys in the lineup to come in come Big Ten season when everybody we're playing has a 6'10" or 7-foot center, and it's really hard to ask Juwan to guard a 6'7" to guard 6'10" centers game in, game out in a 20-game Big Ten schedule.
Yeah, let's get a little creative, which I don't think is necessarily creative, but I think is a little realistic. So let's say we're playing a team or a situation during a game that it's great to have 3, maybe even sometimes 4 guards. What would you see a guard heavy lineup kind of look like?
Yeah, so you have all 3 point guards on the floor.
Which
So
is
you'd have Devontae, you'd have Rob Finney, and you'd have Al Durham out on the court. So that's if you're counting height, 6 foot, 6 foot, 6'4", Romeo at 6'5/6'6", depending on where you look, and then Jawan at 6'9", or Fitzner. But you have one big guy, or 6'7". Sorry for Jawan, but 6'7", 6'10". One big guy, 4 guards.
Mm-hmm. I even see maybe even a more realistic at some points, maybe a 3-guard lineup. So you've got Devontae, then you've got either Rob or Al, which also these quote unquote point guards could be interchangeable. But I could see Devontae on the floor with either Rob or Al, and then Romeo, and then you could add like Justin or Jawan or some bigger guy, Fitzner, like you said, even starting to put someone like Race in. But maybe probably more of a veteran presence down low, just because so a lot of our guards are on the younger side, except for Devontae.
Yeah, definitely. 3-guard lineup. You probably won't see a lot of people are talking about like, oh, the 2-point guard lineup with Michigan runs. I don't think you're going to see a lot of that with IU this year because Devontae is a 6-foot guard and Rob's a 6-foot guard. And having those 2 on the floor, unless it's against Purdue, which would probably work because Carson Edwards is probably going to run the 1 and the 2 at Purdue, and both their guards are kind of small. So if it's 2 very small guards, that'll probably work. But for the most part, you'll probably see if there's a 3-guard lineup, either Rob or Devontae, and then you add in the defense of Al Durham and the defense of Romeo Langford. I think that's a much better lineup if we're running a 3-guard lineup.
You got to give Devontae a little more credit. At least the IU website, their roster has Devontae as 6'3". Shortchanging him 3 inches.
He's 6'3"?
Yeah.
There's no way he's 6'3".
That's what IU officially put out.
He might be in 6'3" with shoes and a couple napkins filled in. I think he's more 6 foot, 6'1".
You got Devontae at 6'3", Al at 6'4", Rob at 6'1", and then the rest of the team at 6'6" and higher.
How does Rob go from 5'11" on the recruiting rankings to 6'1"?
You know, in everyone's inches, it's like sometimes 3 inches, give or take, from what they actually are. It should be like, wrestlers, boxers, all of the WWE, all of the fighting, they all have to weigh in for their specific weight class. Everyone should have to like take off their shoes and do a height thing before every game, so we can always get the exact height, because we never actually know how tall they are.
It's funny the hype complex when it switches from NCAA to the NBA, because in the NCAA everybody's a lot taller, right? Yeah. They add inches, but in the NBA it's like Kevin Durant's not 6'10", he's taller than 7-foot centers. Wait, what is going on? So in the NBA they like make people shorter. So on the scouting report they can get mismatches. It's a weird dynamic, but I love basketball.
Yeah. Let's move to the other side. Maybe they don't want to do a guard package. Maybe they do want to have more of a, we'll go wings and bigs in quotes. So like more of wing package or a bigs kind of package because I put those in quotations because really. So if you look at so Zach, this is again IU Zach 6'6", Justin 6'7", Jerome 6'7", Demizi 6'7", Jawan 6'8", Race 6'8", Jake 6'8", and then Duran, Evan, and Clifton all 6'10". So really, they're all about the same height generally. So if we were going to go more of a bigs package, we'll put it that way. What of course there I just listed what 10 people that could be in some sort of rotation, but generally what could you see in a more consistent rotation?
Oh yeah. I want to throw this lineup out here because I've been thinking about it and it's a lot of fun to me. This is the Romeo is runs point like James Harden lineup. And where Romeo's the primary ball handler, then at the 2 or the second guard would be Jerome Hunter at 6'7". So he's the second smallest person on the court at 6'7". Then you have Zach McRoberts, and then you have either Jawan Morgan or Evan Fitzner or Race Thompson at the 4. And then at the 5, you have Duron Davis or Clifton Moore. So you have, I'll go through that again for you. You at the point, primary ball handler is Romeo. Then you have I am so bad tonight, guys. I apologize. My Jerome Hunter, the second guard. 3 is McRoberts or Justin Smith, and then Jawan, and then Evan Fitzner at the 4, and then at the 5 or whatever, just to make it easy, Clifton or Duran.
Yeah. Sorry, we're trying to check something out because the live stream might have just gone down, but we're gonna keep working on that. But yeah, I
Yes.
agree. Could see more one guard, maybe.
You were texting me and it was just throwing me off, so I apologize. There's a
That's okay.
ding ding and like I'm trying to think of things.
We've got one guard, then you could see something like Demizi, Justin, and Juwan, maybe Fitzner and Duran when we start getting back in there. But you could also throw in Race and Zach, or maybe even Jerome and Jake there too. So really, there's just a whole can of worms that everyone can see. But let's go to the end of the season. Of course, we're predicting way far down the line, something that everything is 100% going to change. It's like us trying to predict games down the line with injuries and stuff. But just for fun, kind of as of now, what do you think the end of the season might look like if people progress?
All right. So if people progress, I want the end of the season to look like exactly what the beginning of the season looks like, except swap McRoberts for Duron Davis. So I'll go through that lineup again. So Devontae fulfills his potential and keeps his spot at point guard. Thank God. Then the second guard in the lineup is Romeo. Again, I said the season will have gone to shreds if Romeo isn't playing. Then at the first forward spot, you have Justin Smith, who has increased his 3-point percentage, so therefore he plays on the perimeter, and Juwan, who can also be the secondary ball handler, actually probably the third ball handler in this lineup, which if you look at Romeo and you look at Devontae, and then having Juwan on the court, which is really cool, by the way, because thank you, Tom Crean, for making Juwan run point at some point during his career. So you have Juwan at the 4 or the second forward spot, and then you had Duron Davis playing center. So you have the 4 guys on the perimeter, including Juwan, and then you have Duron and his post prowess in the center. I think that lineup, and then the ability to interchange a Jerome Hunter, the ability to interchange a Zach McRoberts if we need defense, an ability to, if we need more floor spacing and we want Juwan to get more paint touches, we put in an Evan Fitzner, or we want to give Devontae a break and we put in a Rob Finney, and we want to give Romeo a break and put in either Al Durham, or we put in I keep forgetting Jerome. I keep forgetting Jerome's name. It's driving me insane. But either Jerome or Al Durham to replace Romeo, and I think that's the depth we have. And then I haven't even touched on Race Thompson, who I think can both fill in at the 4 and the 5 admirably. And I think we could definitely see a starting lineup in which he's starting at the 5, and we just basically have 2 Juwan Morgans on the court. And by 2 Juwan Morgans, I mean a 6'7", 6'8" forward that can both spread the floor and is a pretty decent 3-point shooter, but it can also bang down low. And having those two switch like on offense is going to be very tricky for defenses.
Yep. I would say I'm going to go a slightly different from what I said, because my beginning of the season had Devontae, Romeo, Zach, Juwan, Evan. End of the season, I do think Devontae is going to stay, of course, Romeo. I think Justin's going to sneak in there at the starting role, then Juwan, and then Duran. So that's going to be my 5 at the end. But if you are listening on the podcast and you heard all of basically the we're not sure what's going on, YouTube is down right now. And of course, YouTube goes down when we're in the middle of recording the show. So I really hope what we are saying right now gets recorded so that it can come down to a podcast form, because that's how we pull the audio from there. So there you go. We're going to move on to, I'm just going to give a little bit of a Penn State preview, just a couple people to look for, and then we're going to finish off with a couple questions from you, the listeners, which I really hope you send those in, because we really love reading the questions off, and it's great insight. Matt and I don't have all the views in the world, like vantage points throughout the world. So we really do like to see what kind of questions you have, what kind of insight you have, and then we do like to add it on the show, because a lot of it's really great. And there were a couple very different questions this week that was really cool. So Penn State, of course, kicking off 3:30 p.m. this weekend on Saturday, ABC, for the 3rd national TV game in a row. Shudders. But 14.5-point spread as of now in Iowa's favor. Will most definitely go up and down, but ESPN matchup as 90.3% Penn State, which goes to 9.7 Indiana, which both of those spreads and everything is better than Ohio State, but again, not great. So far, Penn State beat Appalachian State, but barely. They also beat Pitt, Kent State, and Illinois. And now they lost their 2nd game in a row, the first to Ohio State 2 weekends ago, and then this past weekend to Michigan State. Was really surprising. So, Matt, if Penn State continues on this, Matt did call this from the very beginning. We'll find the other episode and put it in, that Penn State is that they are basically overrated, because really they barely beat Appalachian State. Then you beat Pitt, which is actually not too bad. Pitt has been putting up fights in their games, but then you beat Kent State and Illinois. Great. Then they lost 2 games in a row, one to Ohio State and Michigan State. So I'm not giving optimism. The way IU played this past weekend, I don't even think IU bouncing back would be able to beat Penn State, but this is not as powerhouse of a Penn State team as you might think. But of course, Penn State QB, Trace McSorley, has been for a while. This year, he's at a 54.1% completion percentage, 11 TDs to 2 interceptions. Except we already saw that narrative this past weekend with a much worse QB. That was about what Nate Stanley had for his stats, and he was a worse QB, and we saw what he did. 9 touchdowns for him total going into the game, and then he threw 6 this past weekend. So, but Trace does run a lot. Holy cow, he runs a lot. He has 79 carries for 447 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he really does run a lot. Yay, we have a viewer back in live stream. So I hope this continued to record. But Going back to speaking of running, let's go to the running game. Really, it goes to Miles Sanders. He's got 700 yards so far in the season and 7 touchdowns, so he's the main guy. Trace then has the next most, but then it kind of goes down from there. Receivers, again, mostly KJ Hamler and Juwan Johnson, but again, mostly KJ because he's got most of the receiving yards. He's got 5 touchdowns as well. In terms of turning the ball over on offense, they do like to fumble a considerable amount. Out of their 6 games, they fumbled 5 times. So they're averaging about 1 fumble a game. And they've thrown 2 picks. So really, Trace has been pretty good at least. He hasn't had the best completion percentage at just over 50%, but he is, Penn State in general is prone to fumbling. On the defensive end, linebacker Jan Johnson and safety Garrett Taylor, who has 2 picks on the season, are the guys that have the most tackles out of the team. Those are kind of 2 highlight defensive players on this Penn State team, and really Penn State defense. They're generally pretty good. They're not the cream of the crop, but they've usually got a pretty good defense. But those are 2 guys that you could look out for. In total, their defense has 19 sacks already. So again, it's kind of like the Ohio State narrative. Like they've played a few more games, but they've got 19 sacks. So they've got a lot. And Sharif Miller has 4 total. So he's the guy on the defensive end, a defensive end for them who really gets in there. But turnovers, they have forced 3 fumbles and 5 interceptions. So on the defensive end, they are getting picks. Now, if Ramsey stays in the whole time, he hasn't at least been until the last game in the red zone twice. He hasn't been throwing too many interceptions. So hopefully that holds true and he does not throw as many interceptions. But do you have any quick thoughts on Penn State before we quickly go into the last couple questions and wrap this show up?
Yeah, them losing Saquon Barkley, surprisingly, has hurt their team. Who
That
knew
was
that
sarcastic,
losing a
by the
top?
way.
Yeah, that was /s on Reddit sarcasm. Yeah, losing a top. Who knew that losing a top 5 pick into the NFL draft would hurt your team? So I didn't think they were deserving of a top 10 ranking at the beginning of the year. Obviously, it was proved right because they lost at home to Michigan State and they lost to Ohio State. And I think they're probably going to lose to Michigan too. Going on the limb there because Michigan looks great. So they're the 4th of the 4 major teams in the Big Ten East. But yeah, for the key to beating Penn State, and I think we've seen this, is not limiting Trace McSorley running. It's limiting Trace McSorley throwing. Because if you're forcing Penn State to run the ball constantly, they're not going to be able to. They're going to get tired. And you'll be able to force them into bad decisions and force Trace McSorley into bad decisions. And if he is able to throw on you, which apparently every quarterback can now throw on IU, but if he's able to throw on IU's defense, it's going to be a long day. But if he has to run the ball for first downs, you can eventually stop them, whether it's for a field goal or, make them punt. You can stop them, and you can stop Trace McSorley with a QB spy. But that is a tall task to ask for this IU defense. I think we all know that the result is going to happen on Saturday. Sadly, we went from we could start 6-0 to are we going to win a bowl game? Yeah, are we going to win a game? Yeah, are we going to win another game? So, as is the roller coaster with an IU season, I love it. I really do.
We're at the bottom right now.
And by I love it, I mean I feel like I am not about to go on live and say what I was just about to say. So, anyways, it's not fun. We're gonna put it that way.
Let's go to questions. I'll give you the first go at both of our questions for this week. Rob on Twitter, latest predictions on who takes home the bucket.
Purdue.
Yeah, Purdue is trending upward as I make a trending upward sign if you're on live, and Purdue is trending downward as I go downward.
Purdue's trending downward too? Purdue's trending upward and downward?
No. I said Purdue's trending up and IU is trending down.
You said Purdue twice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Purdue is going upwards on the roller coaster. IU is going downwards, which is bad.
Yes.
And yes,
I'd
we are
rather
making
us
fun of.
be the trending up team.
Yeah,
It's,
Purdue did look rough, and we did have our fun making fun of them, but they are fixing things right now. And with their coaching staff, I don't think a couple of wins that they've had is going to be the anomaly this year. I think that's them actually, in the true sense of the term, actually trending upward. In all seriousness, so
I mean, the
man,
way the situation's looking at Louisville, I mean, maybe Purdue's out of a coach at the end of the year. But
that's true. So um, on October 16th, we're still a month out from playing Purdue. I'm at now until I see something different. I'm going to go with the same thing Matt said. So I'm going to say Purdue. Let's get into our other very interesting question. I don't know if you saw this yet, Matt. It came in pretty late, but Ben on Twitter says, I know this is a stretch, and I'm going to preface this tweet by this is a very big stretch. He at least even said this at the beginning. There's a very big stretch, and the likelihood of this happening is not very big. But as the situation at Maryland is completely up in the air, which it is, but in all caps, we're Mike DeBoard to leave, comma, would Matt Canada be a good fit for IU at offensive coordinator?
absolutely, positively not. I do not want anybody from that Maryland program to touch IU's football program. We just got rid of Kevin Wilson, who had problems with beating up players mentally, and I don't know about the physical aspect, but mentally abusing players. I do not want a person from a program that allowed an abuse of a player to the point in which he died to be anywhere close to our program. I don't care if we have to hire a person who is a worse at his job but is a better person.
Hmm.
I'd rather IU football be leading on a character standpoint, because God forbid we even have any success anyways, because historically we haven't had any success. I'd rather us be the good guys than have people that allow a player on their team to die. And I'm not saying Matt Canada allowed a person on their team to die, but he was associated with the program, and therefore I don't want him anywhere near our program at all. Sorry, Matt, but I don't want you anywhere near us
I
until proven otherwise. He can go somewhere else, and if he has success there, then he comes and then he can come back. And maybe it
which
wasn't his fault.
Which
But
I think that that was his point, was because Maryland is having, except for their one bad game, they are having a much better season than everyone thought they were going to do. And Matt Canada is now at the helm because, of course, he, he can't even come back to the team at like to even help out with anything. So Matt's
the head
the one
coach.
at the yeah, exactly, the so he's the only one there. And the I think the question was also brought up just because Matt Canada has such big ties to IU, since he was a GA for the team from 94 to 96. Then he was on the team at various different positions from '04 to 2010. So I see where the question is, and yeah, it's tempting to look at that as saying, all right, at least as of the first half of the season, Matt Canada is doing something that people didn't think he should have been able to do with the circumstance giving at Maryland. But if IU, the university and the sports at IU had not had their past, I'm going to agree and echo the kind of statement Matt said, because Kevin Wilson would not have gotten fired at most other universities for what happened. Now it was bad, but that's usually most other universities wouldn't have fired him just for that cause. And I like it. I love how Fred Glass is at least putting his foot down that that's not something that's going to happen even remotely, even something remotely close that's going to happen at IU. So especially until he's also again guilty or innocent until proven guilty, or if you want to look at it, guilty since he was associated with the team, but until he can be proven otherwise. I don't necessarily want that, at least that drama. Even if he's okay, that's at least drama coming over to the program. And he has had a few, we'll say, rough ends of his career with the past few teams he's been on. Whether those have been warranted or not, he has been, except for NC State, where he was there for 3 seasons, from 2011 to the present, he has been on a new team every single year, and especially his mutually, in quotes, mutually parted ways with LSU. Um, he hasn't necessarily left the best taste in everyone's mouth as soon as he left. So again, there's nothing necessarily proven there, but almost where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing, at least to be cautious. So I
Okay,
agree.
but to be fair with the LSU situation, it's not his fault they didn't have
Oh
a
no, it's
quarterback.
not. It's not.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that in addition to other things is just adding on to reasons at least not to have him maybe come onto the coaching staff. But and I loved how you were talking about having a worse offensive coordinator, but like a worse coach, but having a better character. And it's like, well, look where we are now.
Yep.
At least he has a better character, and we're
Yep.
just very frustrated every week. But we're going to leave it there. That about wraps it up, folks, for our 50th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you all so much for joining us. Stay tuned through updates on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound, Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and visit our website, thehoosiersound.com, to find all of our information regarding our podcast. Check it out. It's a cool website. As always, send us your questions as the audience, so you can be sure to comment on Twitter, chat in YouTube, or send us a message at our email account, thehoosiersound@gmail.com, on what questions you have, and we'll get them on our next episode. Lastly, if you're listening all the way down here, if you enjoy our show, please leave us a review. We love to see those reviews and see what your insight or what your thoughts are about our show. Tell a friend, share our links. It really helps so we can grow this podcast. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.